There are moments in a judge's career when the responsibility extends far beyond a single ruling. Moments when the law itself feels fragile, when the integrity of the entire judicial system hangs in the balance. In those moments, you realize you are no longer just deciding a case, you are defending justice from corruption. That moment came for me on a Thursday afternoon in September, when Police Chief Raymond Garrett walked into my courtroom, fixed his eyes on mine, and said words I will never forget. "Judge, you need to understand something," he said calmly. "I run this city. You work for me. This case is going to disappear or you are." In 38 years on the bench, I had encountered every kind of pressure imaginable. Angry defendants, desperate attorneys, wealthy individuals attempting to buy their way out of accountability. But never had someone openly threatened me in my own courtroom. Never had a public official declared, without shame, that the judicial system belonged to him. And certainly never had a sitting police chief implied that my safety depended on my obedience. What happened over the next 8 minutes stunned everyone present and ultimately triggered the largest corruption scandal Providence had ever seen. But before I explain how I responded to Chief Garrett's threat, you need to understand how he ended up standing in my courtroom at all. The case began 3 weeks earlier with what appeared to be a routine traffic stop. Officer Jennifer Walsh, a 5-year veteran of the Providence Police Department, pulled over a black Cadillac Escalade for running a red light on Benefit Street. Nothing unusual. She approached the vehicle, requested the driver's license and registration, and identified the driver as Marcus Chen, a 34-year-old software engineer with no criminal history. Then Officer Walsh looked into the back seat. Poorly concealed beneath a jacket were 3 kilograms of cocaine, street value estimated at nearly $300,000. Officer Walsh immediately called for backup, arrested Marcus Chen, and impounded the vehicle. Marcus was charged with felony drug trafficking, a crime carrying a mandatory minimum sentence of 10 years in state prison. On paper, it was an open and shut case. The officer's body camera footage appeared to support the arrest. But Marcus Chen insisted he was innocent. He told officers and later the court that he had never seen the drugs before. That morning, he explained, he had borrowed the Escalade from his cousin because his own car was in the repair shop. The vehicle belonged to David Chen, and David Chen, as it turned out, was Police Chief Raymond Garrett's nephew. What should have been a straightforward prosecution instantly became something else entirely. Marcus's attorney, public defender Sarah Martinez, filed motions alleging the evidence had been planted. She submitted phone records showing Marcus borrowed the car at 80 Oder M. The traffic stop occurred at 8047 M. Martinez argued there was no plausible way Marcus could have known about drugs hidden in a vehicle he had been driving for less than an hour. Then the district attorney's office made an unusual move. Under pressure from an unnamed source, they offered Marcus a deal. Plead guilty to simple possession and receive probation, no jail time. Marcus refused. "I didn't do this," he said. "I won't lie and say I did." That refusal marked the moment when everything changed. Officer Walsh was abruptly reassigned to desk duty. Her previously spotless personnel record suddenly filled with anonymous complaints, questioning her performance. Complaints that appeared only after Marcus Chen's arrest. Sarah Martinez received a late-night phone call at her home. A male voice warned her to abandon the planted evidence argument, accept the plea deal, and stop making things complicated. She reported the call. Nothing was done. Days later, the prosecutor handling the case, Jennifer Chen, no relation to Marcus, suddenly recused herself, citing vague conflicts of interest she refused to explain. That was when the case landed on my docket for a preliminary hearing. The hearing was scheduled for 20:00 p.m. on a Thursday. Marcus Chen sat quietly at the defense table beside Sarah Martinez. The prosecution's table was conspicuously empty. The newly assigned prosecutor had not yet appeared. But in the front row of the gallery, wearing a full-dress uniform, sat Police Chief Raymond Garrett, 62 years old, 35 years in law enforcement, 8 years as chief. His uniform gleamed like armor, heavy with commendations, service medals, Valor citations, and leadership awards. This was a man who had built a reputation on power and untouchability, and his presence sent a message. Police chiefs do not attend preliminary hearings for routine drug cases. They have departments to run, political meetings to attend, cameras to face. Garrett wasn't there by accident. At the time, I didn't yet know what that message was. I was about to find out, Your Honor. Sarah Martinez began, her voice steady but deliberate. Before we proceed with the preliminary hearing, I need to bring a serious matter to the court's attention. Marcus Chen sat beside her, hands folded, eyes fixed on the bench. Sarah continued, My client maintains his innocence. The narcotics found in the vehicle do not belong to him. They belong to David Chen, the registered owner of the Escalade. She paused, allowing the name to settle in the air. David Chen, she went on, is the nephew of Police Chief Raymond Garrett, who is present in this courtroom today. A faint ripple moved through the gallery. I glanced toward Chief Garrett. His expression did not change, calm, composed, confident. A man used to being untouchable. Your Honor, Sarah said, in the 3 weeks since my client's arrest, a troubling pattern has emerged. Officer Jennifer Walsh, who conducted the traffic stop and discovered the drugs, has been reassigned to desk duty. I have received threatening phone calls at my home late at night. The original prosecutor abruptly recused herself without explanation, and multiple witnesses present at the scene have suddenly refused to cooperate, stating they were advised by the police department not to get involved. These were not minor claims. I leaned forward. Miss Martinez, those are serious allegations. Do you have evidence to support a pattern of interference? Yes, Your Honor, she replied without hesitation. I do, she began methodically. I have Officer Walsh's transfer paperwork dated 2 days after the arrest. I have phone records showing repeated calls to my personal cell phone from blocked and untraceable numbers. I have emails from witnesses stating they were advised explicitly to stay silent. Then she reached into her folder and held up a document. And I have this. She walked toward the bench. This is the registration for the Escalade, showing David Chen as the owner. This is David Chen's criminal record, 2 prior convictions for drug trafficking. And this, she said, holding up another page, is a confidential Providence Police Department memo. The courtroom stirred. It identifies David Chen as a confidential informant for the past 3 years. An informant handled personally by Chief Raymond Garrett. Whispers broke out across the gallery. I raised my hand and silence returned. Miss Martinez, I said, how did you obtain a confidential police memo? It was left anonymously in my mailbox at the public defender's office, Your Honor, she answered. Someone inside the department wants this information made public. I examined the document closely, official letterhead, correct formatting, and at the bottom unmistakably Chief Garrett's signature. I looked up. Chief Garrett, you are present in this courtroom. Would you like to respond to these allegations? He stood slowly, deliberately. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of decades in uniform. Your Honor, he said, I'm here as a concerned citizen and as the police chief committed to justice. Yes, David Chen was an informant. That is correct, but his status is irrelevant to this case. Marcus Chen was found in possession of 3 kilograms of cocaine. The evidence is clear. Officer Walsh did her job. Family connections do not change the facts. Former informant, Sarah interjected sharply. Chief Garrett's jaw tightened. So David Chen is no longer an informant, she asked. That's not relevant, he snapped. Your Honor, Sarah continued, I believe it is extremely relevant. I believe David Chen was using his vehicle to transport drugs. I believe when Officer Walsh pulled over that Escalade, she unknowingly uncovered a trafficking operation involving the police chief's nephew. And I believe everything that followed, the transfer, the threats, the pressure, was about protecting David Chen and shielding Chief Garrett from the scandal of running a drug trafficker as an informant. She turned fully toward the chief. I believe Chief Garrett provided protection for his nephew, allowing him to deal drugs under the cover of cooperation. And when my client borrowed that vehicle, he became the convenient fall guy. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah Martinez had just accused the police chief of corruption in open court. Chief Garrett's face flushed red. Your Honor, this is outrageous, he barked. These are wild accusations with no proof. She's attacking my character to manufacture doubt. I demand sanctions and ask that we proceed based on evidence, not conspiracy theories. I turned to Sarah. Miss Martinez, do you have direct evidence that Chief Garrett protected his nephew, or is this speculation? Your Honor, she said calmly, I have circumstantial evidence that forms a pattern. David Chen's criminal history, the confidential memo, the suspicious timing of Officer Walsh's transfer, the threats, the witness intimidation. Individually, they could be coincidences. Together, they reveal corruption and a cover-up. I turned back to Chief Garrett. Chief, where is David Chen now? Has he been arrested in connection with these drugs? No, Your Honor, he said. There is no evidence linking him to the narcotics. The vehicle is registered to him, I replied. The drugs were in his vehicle. The vehicle was borrowed, Garrett said. That makes Marcus Chen responsible, even though he borrowed it less than an hour before the stop. I asked. Even though David Chen has 2 prior drug convictions. Chief Garrett did not answer. And in that moment the courtroom understood something fundamental had shifted. Chief Garrett's voice hardened. Your Honor, I didn't come here to be interrogated, he said flatly. I came to ensure justice is served. Marcus Chen was caught with drugs. That's the only fact that matters. I leaned back in my chair, studying him carefully. Something about this case felt wrong, deeply wrong. The pieces did not fit together. A software engineer with no criminal record suddenly found transporting $300,000 worth of cocaine in a vehicle he had borrowed that very morning. A vehicle owned by the police chief's nephew, a man with prior drug trafficking convictions. The arresting officer abruptly reassigned. A public defender receiving anonymous threats. Coincidences, perhaps, until they began to stack on top of one another. I looked back at the defense table. Miss Martinez, I said, I am granting your motion for a continuance. Chief Garrett stiffened. I am ordering the district attorney's office to investigate these allegations before this case proceeds. I continued. I want a full explanation for Officer Walsh's transfer. I want the source of the threatening phone calls identified. And I want to know where David Chen is, and why he has not been questioned regarding drugs found in a vehicle registered in his name. That was the moment Chief Garrett made the biggest mistake of his career. He stood abruptly. Judge Caprio, you're making a mistake, he said, his voice low and unmistakably threatening. This case moves forward today. You don't have the authority to launch investigations into police department personnel decisions. I met his stare. You're overstepping, Chief Garrett. I have every authority to ensure the cases in my courtroom are not tainted by corruption or external pressure. Sit down. He did not sit. Instead, he stepped past the gallery railing and began moving toward the bench. My bailiff, Officer D'Angelo, immediately moved to intercept him, but Garrett raised a hand, stopping him. Judge, Garrett said quietly, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom, you need to understand something. I run this city. The police department answers to me. The mayor listens to me. The city council respects me. You're an elected municipal judge. You work for the city, which means you work for me. The room went dead silent. Garrett continued, oblivious to how deeply he was burying himself. This case gets resolved today. Marcus Chen pleads guilty to possession, gets probation, and this all goes away quietly. Officer Walsh stays on desk duty because I say so. The investigation you're talking about never happens, and everyone moves on. He leaned forward, placing both hands on the edge of my bench. Because if you keep pushing this, if you keep digging, things are going to get very difficult for you. Cases can be filed. Allegations can be made. Elections can be lost. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understood perfectly. The police chief of Providence was threatening a judge in open court, promising retaliation if I didn't abandon an inquiry into corruption. I stood slowly. Chief Garrett, I said evenly, did you just threaten me in my own courtroom? He smiled, confident, almost amused. I'm giving you reality, Judge. I'm telling you how Providence works. You want to keep your job, you work with me, not against me. I turned Sir D'Angelo. I said calmly, my voice carrying unmistakable authority. Arrest Chief Garrett immediately. The courtroom froze. Your Honor, the bailiff began. You heard me, I said. Chief Raymond Garrett is under arrest for intimidation of a judicial officer, obstruction of justice, and criminal contempt of court. Take him into custody now. The courtroom erupted. Chief Garrett's face drained of color. You can't arrest me, he shouted. I'm the chief of police. You are the chief of police, I replied. Right now you're a defendant. I added, if he resists, call for backup from the state police. This is no longer a Providence Police Department matter. Officer D'Angelo hesitated only a moment. After 38 years of watching me on the bench, he trusted my judgment. He stepped forward. "Sir," he said, "I need you to put your hands behind your back." Chief Garrett looked around wildly, as if expecting officers to rush in and save him. But the only law enforcement present was my bailiff, a state trooper assigned to courthouse security, and Garrett himself. "This is insane," Garrett shouted as the handcuffs came out. "Judge Caprio, you're finished. You have no idea what you've just done." "I know exactly what I've done," I said. "I've arrested a corrupt police chief who threatened a judge to cover up his nephew's drug trafficking." The click of the handcuffs echoed through the room. Seeing Providence's police chief, still in full dress uniform, medals gleaming, being handcuffed in a municipal courtroom was surreal. Garrett continued shouting as he was led toward the door. "You'll regret this! I have power! I have friends!" "This won't stand. The biggest mistake of my career," I said calmly, "would have been letting you threaten this court and doing nothing. I will not make that mistake." The door closed behind him, muffling his protests. I turned to the state trooper stationed near the wall. "Trooper Michaels, contact the Rhode Island State Police immediately. Inform them that Chief Raymond Garrett has been arrested for intimidating a judicial officer. I want state police detectives here within the hour to take custody and begin a full investigation." As the courtroom slowly settled, one truth was undeniable. No one, no badge, no title, no power stands above the law. Trooper Michaels stood frozen for a moment, still processing what had just happened. Then he nodded once, pulled his radio from his belt and stepped aside to make the call. I turned back to the defense table. "Mr. Chen," I said, "your case is continued pending further investigation. You are released on your own recognizance." Marcus Chen exhaled, his shoulders dropping for the first time since the hearing began. Relief flooded his face. I looked at his attorney. "Miss Martinez, I want you to compile everything you have, phone records, witness statements, emails, the confidential memo, every piece of documentation. Turn it over to the Rhode Island State Police the moment they arrive." "Yes, Your Honor," she said quietly. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet," I replied. If Chief Garrett was telling the truth about his influence, we've just kicked a hornet's nest. If he was bluffing, then we've exposed corruption that needed to be exposed. Either way, the truth is coming out. I turned to the gallery, nearly 50 people who had witnessed everything. "What you saw here today does not leave this courtroom," I said firmly. Chief Garrett threatened a sitting judge and obstructed justice in open court. Those are serious crimes, but until the state police complete their initial investigation, I am ordering everyone present not to discuss these events publicly. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. If word spreads too soon, evidence may disappear. Witnesses could be intimidated. Co-conspirators might flee. Do you all understand? One by one, heads nodded. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Within 2 hours, detectives from the Rhode Island State Police were seated in my chambers, recording my statement. I told them everything: Chief Garrett's presence at the hearing, the allegations raised by Sarah Martinez, the threats, his claim that he ran the city and that I worked for him, his demand that the case be resolved immediately, and his warning that consequences would follow if I didn't comply. I explained the connection to his nephew, David Chen, and his status as a confidential informant. Lieutenant Frank Morrison, the lead detective, listened carefully. "Judge Caprio," he said finally, "you understand that arresting a sitting police chief is going to create massive blowback. The Providence Police Department won't take this quietly." I met his eyes. "Lieutenant, he threatened me in open court. He attempted to obstruct justice and used his position to shield his nephew from prosecution. What was I supposed to do?" Morrison nodded. "No, sir. You did exactly the right thing. I'm just warning you, this is going to get messy before it gets better." He was right. Within 24 hours, the story broke. News stations ran the headline, "Nonstop Providence Police Chief Arrested by Municipal Judge." The Fraternal Order of Police issued a statement calling my actions a politically motivated attack on law enforcement. The mayor held a press conference expressing shock and concern while refusing to comment on an active investigation. Then the dam broke. Officer Jennifer Walsh, The officer who had arrested Marcus Chen and was quietly transferred days later came forward. She told state investigators that Chief Garrett had personally ordered her reassignment and instructed her to forget the Chen arrest entirely. She revealed that David Chen had been dealing drugs for years under the protection of his informant status, and that Garrett had knowingly covered for him. 2 additional officers soon came forward with similar stories. They described a pattern. Garrett had been running a protection racket, allowing certain informants to traffic drugs freely in exchange for loyalty and silence. The confidential memo that appeared in Sarah Martinez's mailbox came from Officer Walsh. She had copied it before her transfer, fearing it would be destroyed. Within a week, state investigators had enough evidence to file charges against Raymond Garrett: racketeering, drug trafficking, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation, and corruption of a public official. Federal authorities stepped in. The FBI opened a civil rights investigation. Marcus Chen's charges were dismissed in their entirety. 2 weeks after his arrest, Raymond Garrett stood before Judge Patricia Matthews in Superior Court for arraignment. He was no longer wearing a uniform. He wore an orange jumpsuit. His medals were gone. The man who once claimed to run the city looked small, diminished. Judge Matthews set bail at $500,000 cash. He couldn't make it. The man who promised I would regret arresting him sat in a jail cell awaiting trial. His fall from power took less than 3 weeks. 8 months later, Raymond Garrett pleaded guilty to multiple federal corruption charges. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. During his allocution, he said something I will never forget. "Your Honor," he admitted, "when I walked into Judge Caprio's courtroom that day, I believed I was untouchable. I'd been a cop for 35 years, chief for 8. I'd built relationships with politicians, prosecutors, and judges. I thought I was above accountability. He was wrong. And his downfall proved a simple truth: no one, no badge, no title, no power stands above the law. When Judge Caprio began asking questions I didn't want him to ask, I lost control," Raymond Garrett said during his allocution. "I became angry. I made a threat. I told him he worked for me." He paused, his voice quieter now. "That was the moment my career truly ended. Not when I first began protecting my nephew. Not when I accepted money to look the other way. Those crimes happened in the shadows. But the moment I threatened a judge in open court, believing my badge would shield me from consequences, that's when everything collapsed." Garrett looked down at the floor. "Judge Caprio taught me something that day," he continued. "No one is above the law. Not police chiefs, not powerful officials. No one. I only wish I had learned that lesson 30 years ago. Maybe I wouldn't be standing here now." 3 years after Garrett's conviction, I received a letter that reminded me why that day in my courtroom mattered. It was from Officer Jennifer Walsh. "Dear Judge Caprio," it began, "I wanted to update you on what has happened since you arrested Chief Garrett." She wrote that the Providence Police Department had undergone a complete restructuring. A new chief, Maria Santos, had taken command. Anti-corruption protocols were implemented. Whistleblower protections were strengthened. Civilian oversight boards were empowered. "The culture has changed," she wrote. "Officers who were once afraid to report wrongdoing now feel protected. The department is rebuilding trust with the community." But then the letter became personal. "When Chief Garrett transferred me for doing my job, arresting his nephew, I felt powerless," she wrote. "I had followed procedure. I had done everything right, and I was punished for it." She explained how close she had come to leaving law enforcement altogether. "When you stood up to him," she continued, "when you refused to be intimidated, when you arrested him despite his threats, you showed me something I had started to doubt, that the system can work. That judges exist to protect justice from corruption. That standing up to power, even when it's dangerous, is possible." Officer Walsh went on to say she was back on patrol. She had been promoted to a training officer, responsible for mentoring new recruits. "I teach them about integrity, accountability, and doing the right thing even when it's hard," she wrote. "I tell them about what you did, about how you defended the judicial system from a corrupt chief, about how you risked your career to ensure justice was served." She ended with words that stayed with me. "You saved my career that day," she wrote, "but more than that, you restored my faith that the system is worth serving. Thank you. I kept that letter. Not because I needed validation, but because it reminded me why I made the choice I did. When Chief Raymond Garrett threatened me in my courtroom, I had two options. I could have backed down. I could have continued the case the way he demanded. I could have avoided confrontation, protected myself, and gone home that night without incident. It would have been easier, safer, and no one would have blamed me. But that choice would have sent a dangerous message that corruption wins, that threats work, that powerful people can intimidate the courts and bend justice to their will. The other option was to stand up to him, to risk political backlash, to accept the possibility that maybe he truly did have enough power to destroy my career. It was the harder choice, but it was the only choice consistent with the oath I had taken 38 years earlier, to uphold the Constitution, to administer justice fairly, and to protect the integrity of the court. I didn't have Chief Garrett arrested because I was brave or heroic. I did it because defending the judicial system is the most fundamental responsibility a judge has. Raymond Garrett believed he ran the city. He believed his badge made him untouchable. He believed threatening a judge would make his problems disappear. He was wrong about everything. In my courtroom, no one is above the law, not defendants, not police officers, not elected officials, not even police chiefs. And when he crossed that line, when he threatened the independence of the court, I had him taken into custody. Not for revenge, not for spectacle, but because justice, once compromised, endangers us all. Court adjourned.